Welcome to Inside ArtScroll, where the books that we read and the people that write them come to life. It is a pleasure and an honor to welcome to ArtScroll Studios for the very first time, Dov Weller.
Nice to see you.
Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem. It's great to be here.
And the book that brings us here, the Sefer, is the Rav Meir Shapiro and Chachmei Lublin Haggadah. A beautiful Haggadah. I know, because I read a lot of it. It's really magnificent.
Thank you.
And Rav Dov, this is actually your fifth book with ArtScroll, correct?
Correct.
And it took 5 books until you finally agreed to come in here.
That's it.
Five's a charm.
5 is the charm.
Okay, let's jump right in. First of all, are you an author, a Rav? What's your connection to writing books and Sfarim?
Great question. So I'm not a rabbi, and I'm not an author. Just a Pashti Yid. Went to Kollel for a little bit. I've been working for the past 10 years in the healthcare space. And really, it's always a passion of mine. I've not been known as a fantastic writer. You could ask my English teacher from 8th grade. But it's just something that I had a passion to, put pen to paper, gather, whether it's makar, sources, and ideas. And, one thing leads to the next. I had a chavrusa of mine. His name was Rabbi Meir Shapiro, who wrote the What If series. Mm-hmm. And he told me, he said, listen, anyone could do this. So I think, like the Gemara says, that Hill is Machayev the Aniyim and Yosef is Machayev his crowd. I could definitely be Machayev all the people that have no writing experience. My wife tells me still, she says, after 5 books, you don't know when it's apostrophe S apostrophe. I'm like, listen, that's what we have editors for. So anyone out there that has an atiyah, has this desire to try and to push to write something, you can do it 100%.
Dov B'chaim V'sa authors.
Yes. Definitely.
Okay. Let's jump into this Haggadah. It's really a fascinating Haggadah. I asked this question to somebody else. Ma nishtana Haggadah hazu mikol Haggadahs. The single most popular printed sefer is Haggadahs. What compelled you to write a Haggadah? And B, what's your connection to Chachmei Lublin, to Rav Meir Shapiro, Daf Yomi? What was it that set you on this path?
Excellent. So regarding the Haggadah, you're correct. It says, and that's why we have a tremendous proliferation of Haggadahs, probably thousands at this point in time. But I've always had an atiyah towards the Haggadah. Put one out with ArtScroll about 10 years ago. And it's a very inspiring night. It's the night where we're mechazik our families, mechazik ourselves, in emunah, and bitachon, and so many important foundations of what it means to be a Yid. And I feel like the text of the Haggadah just is an entrance to talk about anything, what it means to be that Yid, to be a practical Baal bitachon, to be that practical Baal maimin, chesed, tzedakah, tefillah, itzol, hakar satayv. Everything you could imagine is found within the Haggadah. And that's why for me, writing on the Haggadah has just been something, it's a labor of love, and that's something that I enjoy thoroughly. As far as Chachmei Lublin, I always had this connection to Rav Meir. I've never been to Lublin.
Do you do Daf Yomi?
I do Daf Yomi, my first cycle, so I'm not someone that's done it for 4 or 5 cycles. But I always had this natiyah towards Rav Meir, towards his chen, his hadras panim. And about last year, about 8-9 months ago, I was talking to Rabbi Gedalia. And we were floating a few different ideas, and we started talking about Lublin. And originally the idea would be is to do the city of Lublin Haggadah, Torah from the Chayza, Torah from Rav Tzaddik, together with Rav Meir. And then it morphed to just focusing on the Chachmei Lublin. There's so much Torah and story and chizuk and unbelievable history that exists within this yeshiva, which was only around for about 10-11 years.
Unbelievable.
But nevertheless, it has a tremendous place, a place of love, a place of example for yeshivas until today. And many of the figures there some of them are very well known, Rav Meir and others, and some of them are not. So definitely try to bring out a lot of the Torah, the stories, the inspiration, and really their messages, which are just exceptional. And,
could we, before we talk about the personalities, which I would love to talk about the gedolim that are on the front cover here, tell us what it would be like if a Bachar wanted to get accepted into Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin.
Excellent question. So to get into Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, you had to know 200 blot Gemara. And when we say Gemara, it's Gemara, Rashi, Taisus, Rishain, and Balpeh.
How old were you when you would reply?
So you could be really, usually about 16, 17, 18. 18 was more on the younger side, 16 was more on the younger side, but There were people that Bachram that were just, geniuses or had just a unbelievable tfisa and gemara, etc. That can come in slightly younger, but typically you were 18, 19, 20, and someone like Rav Pinchas Hirschsprung came in a little earlier.
What did he take a faher on?
So great question. So if you've seen, they have them in Lublin today. They have the petek, so to say, the ticket of your name, the city, and then how many blot you're going to be tested on. And the minimum was 200. So some Bachram wrote 200, some wrote 300, 350, and Rav Pinchas handed in his petek, his ticket for the entrance exam. It just said Shas. And Rav Meir was very taken by Rav Pinchas Hirschsprung. And he said that kedai the yeshiva for Rav Pinchas, to the point that when he was just a few months into being in the yeshiva, maybe a year and change, Rav Meir appointed him at a very young age to be the official boichin, to be the tester, the one who gives the entrance exams to any new bacher coming in. And obviously to do that, you have to have exceptional knowledge, exceptional bikiyas, iyun, and Rav Pinchas held that position in a very, very special way, and he held Rav Meir and the yeshiva in an extremely close way throughout his entire life.
Okay, so let's start at the top. In the center of these 5 people is Rav Meir Shapiro. Tell us how Rav Meir Shapiro thought of opening this, Harvard Havdil of yeshivas. What was his vision? What pushed him in that direction? He was the Rav of the town of Lublin, right?
Correct. So, to move back a little bit, Rav Meir became the Rav when Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin opened. Oh. So Rav Meir had this desire to really revolutionize the Torah world. He was someone who had tremendous vision. He was a revolutionary. And he was an innovator in the most exceptional way. We have the Daf Yomi, something which was not very... we had the Daf Yomi program, which he innovated and really, till today, obviously has just been gathering strength. One of his very, very most famous revolutions. But at that point in time, in Poland, the status of a yeshiva bacher, he was treated as a second-class citizen. There was no place to eat. Yeshivas did not have dining rooms. They had to go eat teg, as it was called, by balabatim, who either didn't like them very much. If they would come late, they'd say, "You're too late." There wasn't enough food very often. They didn't have a place to sleep. There was no official dormitory. They would often sleep in the yeshiva, sleep on the benches of the shul, or sometimes they would sleep as the shomer in a store. And it was extremely degrading to the bachrim. And just the facilities were almost non-existent. And Rav Meir understood that in order to uplift the kavod Torah, sometimes we have to do that by uplifting the chitzonius, by the outside, the facade of a yeshiva, the building of a yeshiva, to show that Torah is preeminent, that Torah is something which is honorable, and that would happen through building this magnificent yeshiva, which was something which is just unheard of in Poland at the time. And Rav Meir, with tremendous mesiras nefesh, had the Hanachas Even Apina in 1923, and the event was covered by journalists and the media, and 50,000 people came to this unbelievable occasion of Rav Meir wanting to build this structure of 6 floors with a dormitory, which was something unheard of, a kitchen, a dining room, a mikveh, a dentist, really anything you can think of, a fresh bakery for the bachrim to have, and just a beautiful, beautiful dormitory and beis medrash. And that was so that way not only the bachrim should feel uplifted, but the people surrounding them, the balabatim, the community, really the world should understand the chashivas HaTorah and the centrality that Torah plays in our life.
Now, in order to do that, he had to hire very special people. Share with us who the Kosher Glover was.
Okay. So, interestingly enough, he didn't really hire the Kosher Glover,
okay.
Because Rav Meir was nifter in 1933, at a very young age of 46. Yeah. Yeshiva opened in 1930. Rav Meir had, from 1923 till 1930, been almost on the road, collecting money. It was an enormous, enormous amount of money that was needed for the yeshiva. Rav Meir was a solitary figure, marching across Europe, across America, alone, but always guided by this burning desire to be a mayor, to go out and illuminate, and he did that just in an exceptional way. So when the yeshiva opened in 1930, he was rosh yeshiva for about 3 years, and during that time, the yeshiva was in terrible debt, and it was a magical time for Rav Meir, but unfortunately he passed away at the age of 46. And the yeshiva had, somewhat of a intermediary period until the Kosher Glover came in. The Kosher Glover was a Aryeh Tzvi Fromer, and that's who this is over here. And he took over the position of Rosh Yeshiva of Chachmei Lublin in 1935. He was the Rosh Yeshiva till, unfortunately, the closing of the yeshiva, 1941, during the Holocaust, when the Nazis took over actually the yeshiva and made it into their headquarters. But the Kosher Glover, Reb Fromer, was just an exceptional person. He was Davak HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He had a tremendous dveikus Hashem. His tefillah was otherworldly. They say he would say Nishmas. If someone didn't see the Nishmas Shabbos morning of the Kosher Glover, Me'olam ra Nishmas. He never saw Nishmas. He would say Nishmas, tremendous bechiyas for up to a half hour. And his tefillah, he was a baki in Shas, Nigla, Nister, Kabbalah, Chasidus. His Rebbe was the famous Avnei Nezer, Rabbi Avram Bornstein. And he was someone who was just otherworldly. And his Torah, and his Svarim, and he was a Rosh Yeshiva, and a Paisik, which was something of a rarity, like Rav Meir, who was both a Rosh Yeshiva of Chachmei Lublin, but a very distinguished Paisik as well. The Kosher Glover was a Paisik, and we have from him today the Shailosh and Tshuvas Eretz Tzvi. And it's very fascinating. You go through the Tshuvas of the Eretz Tzvi. The common theme that runs through this Sefer is he's always looking to be Malamid Zchus. His idea of, there's a minig in Klal Yisrael, where does it come from? What's the mikar for it? How do we do this? Ultimately, we have to go ahead and be Dan L'Kav Zchus Klal Yisrael, and he would plumb the depths of Shas and Mefarshim and every part of Torah in order to go ahead and bring a zchus for Klal Yisrael as to why they did certain things. So he was just someone who was exceptional in the yeshiva. He was exceptionally beloved.
Was he killed by the Nazis?
And he was killed in the Nazis. So the story goes in 1943, he was in Warsaw, in the Warsaw ghetto with him. He had 7 children. They were all married at the time. Families, entire family, his wife. And in the Warsaw ghetto, he was living in Gehenna. There was no food. They were in hiding. But he continued his avodah, his davening, his tefillah, his chesed. He was part of a bezdin at that point in time, together with other gedolim that were paskening some of the most difficult shilos to ever exist, shilos of life and death, of how to deal with the day-to-day within such a terrible situation. And his avodah did not cease. His davening, his avodas Hashem, it was just unbelievable. He would get up at 12 o'clock at night for Tikkun Chatzos, and he said, "Me'olam lechidashti Torah, k'mai," the ghetto of Warsaw. That's how close he was. And unfortunately, in 1943, him and his entire family and all their children and grandchildren were taken to the ghettos, were taken to the concentration camps. And as he was about to enter into the gas chambers, he told his family, he turned around to his family, and he says, "Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shechiyonu v'kiyimonu v'giyonu lazman hazeh," because now we could be mekayim b'chol moedecha v'chol nafshecha. That's who he was. That was his legacy. And
does he have any descendants, or you don't know?
So his direct family was unfortunately killed by the Nazis, but he did have a brother and a nephew. So his nephew was the one that had many of the ksavim. He lived in Haifa. His name is Reb Dov Weller. And this Reb Dov has children, so it's there is some descendants, but not the direct line. But a lot of the ksavim we have, and a lot of the printing of the Svarim of the Eretz Tzvi comes from this Reb Dov Weller.
Okay, let's move on. The mashgiach was the next one?
So this is the mashgiach. His name is Reb Shmuel Zelachover, Reb Shmuel Horowitz, a Levi. He was a Levi from the famous Shlah family. And he was born in the town of Zelachov. And he was what was called an Ish Pella, or a Yeled Pella. He was someone at the age of 6 who finished the entire Mishnayos. He was a genius of all geniuses. He said that from the day that he became cognizant of the Rebbeinu Shalom, he was never Mesiach Das from Hashem. He says he remembers his daily life from the age of 2. So I don't know if most of us can remember 2. But Reb Shmuel Zelachover was someone who was just an Ish Pella.
What do they call him?
Reb Shimela.
Yeah.
So Reb Shimon Zelachover. And he was born in 1877. So he was, interestingly enough, 10 years older than Rav Meir. And at first he actually went to work. He learned for a short time by the Avnei Nezer, like the Kosher Glover. But eventually he went to work for Parnas. He was successful for a time. And then the business went down. And he began to teach in multiple communities, different communities, until Rav Meir hired him. And this Reb Shimon Zelachaver, he dressed very simply. He was small, he was short, he wore a very large yarmulke, a very large forehead, and he was just someone who never forgot anything. The Chabina Rav said about him, in Europe, the entire Europe, there was no one who had a memory like Reb Shimon other than the Rogatchover. And his avodah was very unique. He felt that he was not a very big fan of pilpul, which was the style of learning within the yeshiva. And he also didn't feel that you necessarily needed a Rebbe. A Rebbe is going to teach one mahalach in learning. And he said, why is that necessary? There are so many ways of learning. And he felt that the presence of Kabbalah and Chassidus was a very important thing. And when he would speak, it was unbelievable. He'd sit there, standing up with his eyes closed. Kamat never looked in a sefer. And he just crossed the full expanse of Torah. Chassidus, Kabbalah, Nigla, Nistar. It was all totally on his fingertips. Maral. And the Bachrim were extremely taken by this. He was an unbelievable chazan, he was a Bal Kairei, and someone who just really inspired the talmidim in a very, very unique way. The Shevet HaLevi, Reb Shmuel Vosner, was exceptionally close both to Rav Meir and to Reb Shimela. And Reb Shimela wrote what's called a Surva Merabanan, which was a type of smicha to very, very few Bachrim. But the Shevet HaLevi was one of them who was zeichet to have that letter from him. And Reb Shimela's Torah was very unique, very depthful. And he was someone who played a role. He was in the yeshiva for about 3 years, from about 1930 when the yeshiva started, a short time after that, till 1933, 1934, and Rav Meir left. It's a little bit of unknown about the trajectory of the yeshiva. And Reb Shimela left, he moved to Warsaw, and unfortunately him and his family as well were killed in the war.
And finally we have Reb Pinchas Hirschsprung, he ended up in Montreal.
In Montreal, correct. So Reb Pinchas was a Talmud, like we said, was a Talmud in very close to Rav Meir. And Rav Meir was his guiding light. I had the schus of speaking to a few of his children, his daughter and his son, and they said, we lived with Rav Meir because their father lived with Rav Meir. And Reb Pinchas was also a tremendous masmid, tremendous person. He had tremendous humility. And he became a world-class posek. And someone who was there for his community. Eventually in 1941, he escaped B'nisei Nisim from the war. He has an autobiography called The Veil of Tears. It's available, very, very fascinating read of hearing his travails through Europe and escaping. Was an unbelievable recount. And eventually he came to Montreal. And for the next about 45 years, he was the Abbezin of Montreal. And he was just beloved by everyone. And he said something very beautiful. He said that he was asked that he connected to everyone, whether it was the Ashkenazim, the Sfardim, the Chassidim, the Litvaks, the Mizrahi. And someone asked him, what's pshat? He just has this unbelievable, all-encompassing love for Yidden. And he said it's very simple. Nothing brings HaKadosh Baruch Hu more nachas than achdus, than unity within Klal Yisrael. And he says, I want to be part of that unity. I want to be part of that bringing nachas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's who he was. And they say his Levaya was the largest Levaya in Montreal, and all groups were there.
Can we jump into the Haggadah, because this is really important.
Jump into the Haggadah. We forgot Rav Vosner, but...
Rav Vosner, okay. Well,
we know Rav Vosner.
We at least we've heard of Rav Vosner, he's been in Ireland. Okay.
Yes.
The Haggadah. So how did you go about compiling this? You found a vart from Rav Hirschsprung and a vart from Rav Meir Shapiro and a vart from the Kojic and you just put them. What was the process? Because I'm sure there's a lot out there, and you have to figure out what to do.
There's a tremendous amount of material. Some more, some less. There's biographies. There's Torah. There's gathered Torah from the talmidim of each of these personages. So really going through, researching, and just methodically going through, I would say, dozens of different svarim and periodicals and speaking to people that either had parents who learned there, fathers who learned there, or people that knew talmidim there, and just getting first-hand recounts of what happened in Lublin, their experiences with Rav Meir, with the Kojic, with these very special gedolim. And like we said, the text of the Haggadah is just an exceptional way to bring out really any part of what it means to be a Yid. It's a platform for almost any conversation you want to have at your Seder. So I tried to bring that out, what it means to use the Seder as that platform to bring out, the important mission of the night, which is the Chag HaEmunah, the Chag bitachon, and try to, through their lives and their Torah, to bring it down to us so we can really be inspired by their Torah, be inspired by their life, which was just exceptional.
Dov, is the Weller family Seder this year going to be heavily infused with Chachmei Lublin.
So it happens to be the last 9 months, you could ask my family. It's been all about Rav Meir, the Kosher Glover. My little 5-year-old says, oh, the Kosher Glover ta. So
there's a song, he made it into a song, so people know who it is now. But whatever.
Many people don't know who the Kosher Glover is. My suggestion is to get his Sefer ArtScroll, which is a compilation of his Torah and Chumash. It's 2 volumes on Mayadim. Exceptional divrei Torah. But yeah, Mirz Hashem, we're going to speak out divrei Torah from these great gedolim, and there's so much to learn from them, practically speaking, for any age, anyone at your table, whether it's men, women, children, any background, there's something to learn from these great gedolim that we can ultimately tap into and really gain from.
You know what? I don't think we could finish this interview without hearing at least one piece of Torah that's in here. What's your go-to, the part that drew you in the most?
So I'm going to give 2 very short divrei Torah. One of them is that Rav Meir had a very special talmid. He was a very young child. His name was Ephraim Bitrig. And this is Rav Meir's first position, which was in Galina, when he became the Rav at a very young age. And this Ephraim was an unbelievable child. He was the son of a shoemaker. Very simple background, no formal training from his father, from his parents. And he excelled in an exceptional way. And Rav Meir, who did not have any children, found this child to be like his child almost, like his own son. Ben Yaakov Ephraim. And Rav Meir took personal delight in this child, his Torah, his mental acumen, his intelligence. And unfortunately, this child, this Ephraim Bitrig, was nifter at a very young age. And it broke Rav Meir. Rav Meir was very, very broken by this. And his levaya, Rav Meir was maspid, and he said something which is tremendous. He says, Ben Yaakov Ephraim, Yelet Shashuim, this Ephraim Bitrig, my Talmud, our Talmud, he was Yaakov Ephraim, he was the most precious, he was Yelet Shashuim. And Zachar Eskerena Oid. What do I remember when I think about Ephraim? Eskerena, I remember the Oid, the potential, what could have been, what could have come from him, the ability that he could have brought to the world, that very light that he could have brought to the world, the tremendous Torah that didn't come to light, the avodah, the gemilas chasadim, the chesed, the illumination that he could have brought, the potential that was not tapped into. Zachar Eskerena Oid. I remember the Oid that was within him. Al ken hamu me'ailoi, my innards stir with pain because I remember that oid. And I think that's a message to every single person here. We all have the oid within us, that latent potential to tap into. And Rav Meir and all these gedolim showed us to push, to be able to do more, to not rest, to add something small. Everyone has that oid, whether it's an extra 5 minutes a day. Rav Meir was machadish the idea, something consistent. And for some people it's hard. But do that oid, tap into the oid, the little bit of potential within, the little bit of the more we can do, and over time we'll be zeichet to really maximize and actualize the oid that is within each and every one of us.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Last
so
but
much.
not least,
Go ahead.
cut it?
Yeah.
Last but not least, the last year of Rav Meir's life was, the last Yom Kippur of Meir's life was in Lublin, and it was by Kol Nidre. And we know it's the holiest day, one of the holiest days of the night and
Of the year.
I think it was one of the holiest nights of the year. And there was an elderly yid, a chashav Talmid Chacham, that was given the kibbud of taking out the Sefer Torah by Kol Nidre. And he went up, this elderly yid, this Talmid Chacham, he went up and he took out the Sefer Torah. And as he turned around to begin encircling the tzibur, to begin encircling the Talmidei Chachamim, the talmidim of Chachmei Lublin, he fell. And the entire yeshiva gasped. And they ran over to him, this elderly man, this elderly Talmid Chacham. And despite the fact that he had fallen, and despite the fact that his fragility, he still held on to the Torah. And they tried to help him up. And he said, no, I'm going to get up by myself. And he got up. It was obviously hard for him, still holding that Sefer Torah. And he began to circle the talmidim, to begin to circle the Beis Medrash, reciting, but the talmidim were broken. The holiest, night of the year, the Yom HaMishpat, a Sefer Torah falls, and they were crying. It was a terrible omen, a terrible siman for what's gonna happen. And Rav Meir got up and he spoke between Kol Nidre and Ma'ariv after this incident, and he started crying. And he said, Rabbeinu Shalom, Ru'u, look how unbelievable it is. This yid, your child, he fell. And despite the fact that he has fallen, despite the fact that he had fallen, he nevertheless held on to your Sefer Torah. And Rabbi Shlomo, we're maftiach you, we're going to promise you that no matter what happens, we're always going to hold on to that Sefer Torah. And I think that's the message. We see that today with all the difficulty happening within Klal Yisrael, October 7th, and throughout our history. No matter how we've been persecuted, how we've been pushed down, how we've been downtrodden and fallen, a Yid always holds on to that Sefer Torah. And Rav Meir and all these gedolim, despite their challenges, have shown us that no matter how far we've potentially fallen, and we've been hurt and persecuted and challenged, and people have derided us and tried to stop our goals, we're always going to hold on to that Sefer Torah.
Beautiful.
And
that's Leil Seder.
That's
what we talk about. Look what they did to us, but we're still holding on.
We're still holding on.
And I highly encourage people, buy it now already. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to do Shleishim Yom, buy it Purim time. Learn a little bit of the Haggadah each day, and then you'll have so many beautiful things. Like you said, if your family is into this, if they're into that, it's in here. And what I really liked about this Haggadah was that you gave such a beautiful introduction. You know, we talked a little bit about personalities, about Lublin, so that when you start reading the Torah, it's not far. It's not just a sefer that you're opening. You're in it. You're in Chachmei Lublin, if you want to call it that. And then all of a sudden, the divrei Torah take on a life of their own.
Yeah. So one of the things we worked on, I worked on a lot, was the biographies. Now, these are brief sketches. This is not a historical sefer. But really to introduce who these figures were and their life, because there's so much to learn just from the history of these gedolim. And the back part of the sefer has really, biographical sketches of each one, and pictures, a small amount of, so that way when we jump into the Haggadah and we hear a vart from the Kodesh Glover, we hear a vart from Rav Meir and Rav Pinchas and the others, we can truly understand their life, their challenges, and how they rose above those challenges, because each one had tremendous challenges and each one had tremendous nisyonis, but to see the light they brought to the world in an exceptional way, and that's something that is everyone can learn from.
Gewaldig. Thank you so much for producing this Haggadah, bringing it to life. I know the Landau family Seder and Hashem is going to benefit from this Haggadah, and you should continue at the right time to write beautiful svarim and to inspire Klal Yisrael.
Bezos Hashem.
Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.